Why is JAX so disliked by everyone? He comes across as one of the more complicated characters in The Amazing Digital Circus. But unfortunately, his complexity doesn't seem to come across in a positive light. From the beginning, JAX was never portrayed as a good person, yet despite his rough behavior and prickly attitude, many fans seem to take a liking to him after the very first episode. He may have been mean to nearly everyone he encountered, but he didn't give off a vibe of being truly evil at the time. However, once episode 2 was released, and we got a deeper look into his personality, fans were left stunned by some of the things he actually does. Yet, in a way, it's logical that we are slowly discovering more about him. Gooseworx, the creator, even tweeted recently, saying that only the strong JAX fans will survive the show. This hints that JAX is likely to become a character that divides the fandom throughout the rest of the series, especially as more controversial aspects of his behavior come to light. Being trapped in a video game world would likely push anyone to their limits, making them act out in ways they normally wouldn't. If we were in the same situation, who knows how we'd handle it? But with JAX, there's something unique about how he's dealing with the situation. He doesn't just seem to be struggling with coping. He genuinely comes across as a troubled person, as Gooseworx hinted at. Unlike the other members of the circus, it's not just JAX's way of handling things that sets him apart. It's the underlying complexity of his character that's more difficult to unravel. When JAX was first introduced in episode 1, he immediately stood out as a prankster with a mean streak. Still, we didn't get to see much of his darker side just yet. This could be due to the setting, as the characters were on an in-house adventure during the episode, which may have kept certain aspects of his personality from being fully showcased. But even though we didn't see everything, there were still some hints at his more questionable traits, giving a glimpse of what was to come. The second episode shed more light on JAX's behavior, and we saw a noticeable shift. His actions became significantly worse compared to episode 1. Based on this trend, it's safe to assume that as time goes on, his behavior will continue to deteriorate. It seems that JAX wasn't the friendliest character even when he first arrived at the circus, and there's probably a good reason why none of the other members have grown to like him. In the first episode, for example, we saw how JAX interacted with Gangle. He stepped on her broken mask, an act that was both cruel and unnecessary, and later pushed her into the glink hole. On top of that, he insulted Kinger by calling him crazy, and infuriated Ragatha when he admitted that he had placed centipedes in her room. These incidents provide clear explanations as to why the other circus members don't care for JAX at all. Despite these cruel actions, many fans still found a way to sympathize with him. Perhaps part of the reason is that JAX's actions can be viewed as a coping mechanism, a way of dealing with the fact that he's trapped in the video game world of The Amazing Digital Circus. It's understandable that the concept of abstracting seems like a terrifying and painful process, and it's possible that JAX is doing what he can to maintain his sanity by constantly pulling these pranks on the others. But while this may explain some of his behavior, it doesn't seem to be the only reason for JAX's cruel actions. He comes across as someone who's being evil for the sake of being evil, with little regard for the consequences. Since the circus characters aren't in any real physical danger and can't be killed, except through abstraction, JAX feels free to act on his darkest impulses without fear of reprisal. It's likely that, when he was in his human form, he was never able to fully express himself this way. Now that he's in the circus, he no longer cares about holding back, letting his feelings control his actions without any concern for the damage they cause. Gooseworx may have been right when she implied that JAX is the one who deserves to be stuck in the circus more than anyone else. JAX's behavior frequently suggests that he considers himself above the others, even Kane. If we look back at episode 1, after Pomni first spawned in, JAX was the first to comment on her arrival. His attitude was on full display as he sarcastically asked Kane,
Kane, is this one of your NPCs or is this a new sucker? Because if it's a new character, we're gonna have to redo this whole theme song.
JAX clearly thought little of Pomni right from the start and was more concerned with whether they'd have to redo their theme song. This kind of attitude shows that JAX only seems interested in things that directly benefit him, and he shows little to no interest in anything else. This pattern became even more evident during the Candy Carrier Chaos adventure. JAX complained about being bored. especially because the adventure lacked the violence and bloodshed he seemed to crave. But if Zubul could opt out of the adventure by simply saying no, perhaps JAX could do the same. Maybe Kane has the power to bring them back if they refuse, though it's still unclear whether that's actually possible. Throughout the adventure, JAX continually tried to stir up trouble. He threw Pomni out of the truck and later suggested that Gangle should make their truck crash into Gummigoo truck. While this was already bad enough, it didn't seem to satisfy JAX's thirst for chaos. His need to cause trouble was even more obvious in episode 2 when, after the adventure ended and the characters returned to the princess, JAX was visibly disappointed that nothing exciting, at least for him, had happened. But his mood quickly changed when he realized his plan had worked. The chocolate fudge monster was able to enter the kingdom with the stolen key, and once it started eating the residents, JAX's face lit up with a wide smile. His delight in the chaos and destruction is undeniably evil. If we think back to episode 1, there are signs that JAX might have already been stirring up trouble even then. For instance, when Ragatha suggested to Pomni that they go check on Kaufmal and introduce her to him, JAX quickly invited himself along instead of heading with the others to the glowing hole. If we assume that JAX only cares about situations where he stands to benefit, we could speculate that he might have known Kaufmal was on the verge of abstracting. Perhaps he wanted to witness Ragatha's reaction to seeing Kaufmal in such a state. JAX had a key to Kaufmal's room, which suggests that he had been there not too long ago. If JAX knew that Kaufmal was on the edge of abstraction, but still chose to unlock the door and let him loose, that would be a cruel move. Yet when JAX opened the door, he did seem genuinely surprised, which leaves open the possibility that he didn't know for certain. However, when Kaufmal abstracted, JAX wasted no time running away, leaving Ragatha and Pomni behind to face the danger. Pomni, who was new to the circus and had no knowledge of abstraction, was terrified, as all she saw was a giant horse-like creature with multiple eyes that looked ready to devour her. There's something curious about JAX's relationship with keys. In episode 2, he stole the key that the princess had given to Ragatha and used it to unlock the gate, allowing the fudge monster to wreak havoc in the kingdom. JAX even seemed to connect with the fudge monster on some level. When the monster explained that it had been exiled by Princess Lulu for eating the kingdom's citizens, JAX appeared to sympathize with its plight. The fudge monster claimed that it couldn't help eating the citizens because they were too delicious. While the monster may not be aware that its actions are evil, since it's an NPC, JAX, on the other hand, is not an NPC, unless of course he is, though that's unlikely. I've toyed with the idea in some of my theories, but I think it's a long shot. JAX is probably human. Toward the end of episode 2, there was an interesting scene during which the characters talked about the funerals they hold for those who abstract. Ragatha told Pomni that they'd be holding a funeral for the citizens of the kingdom, and Kinger mentioned that it was the least they could do. In that moment, we saw JAX become a bit emotional. Perhaps he was thinking about Kaufmal, or maybe something else was on his mind. We don't have much to go on, as we couldn't hear the speeches at the funeral. It's possible that Kaufmal was the only one in the circus who genuinely liked JAX, and now that Kaufmal is gone, JAX may feel a sense of loss. Or it's also possible that the funeral made JAX reflect on what would happen if he abstracted. Since none of the other circus members seemed to like him, he might fear that no one would hold a funeral for him, which could explain why he seemed saddened. Though JAX has done a lot of terrible things, I believe there's still room for his character to grow. There's always a chance for redemption. If the next episodes focus on character development, as we hope, perhaps we'll see JAX evolve into a better person. Gooseworx hinted that future episodes will explore more of the characters, and we're expecting the next one to focus on Zubul. If JAX manages to change for the better, he could become my favorite character, not just because he turns good, but because of the difficult journey that would lead him to such growth. Let me know what you think of JAX in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and check out the next video.